Hi, it's Scott Vogel on sex addiction. I'm going to talk to you about an addiction to paid sex. When sex addiction takes the form of paid sex, this can have a much greater negative impact and a more damaging impact on a person's life than some other sexually addictive behaviors. Not only can it form a dependence on faulty relationships, but it can cause some severe financial, legal, and a lot of health problems as well. Paid sex comes in many forms, but the most common is phone sex because it's one of the easiest to access as far as paid sex goes. Because the charges are billed by the minute, it can quickly become a very, very expensive and a large financial burden for a person with a sex addiction who uses phone sex to medicate and satisfy their sexual desires. Phone sex offers a level of intimacy, but it's a false intimacy because there's really no true connection. And it allows for distancing, and it makes it an attractive option for an addict looking for a minimal degree of intimacy who may be too shy or lack the social skills to obtain sex in another fashion. So, what happens during phone sex? There are a number of things that can happen depending on the options and the services offered by the paid sex workers, sometimes referred to as fantasy artists or adult phone entertainers. They're usually trained to provide various service to the caller depending on what they're looking for. The conversations can include suggestive language and descriptions of the sexual acts that the caller, the sex addict, wants. The verbal acting out of sexual acts or guided sex tours, taking them on a sexual journey to a place that they want to go. Callers most times masturbate during the conversations, or they masturbate shortly after the call is over, recalling the actual verbal language, the tour, to achieve their orgasm. So the financial problems that start to arise, obviously, from paid sex are the credit card charges used to pay for these, and at the time of the actual acting out, you don't see the actual expense because it's on a credit card, and it's, well, I'll take care of it later. And the phone bills for those that use phone services that are billed to the phone, large phone bills come in, and again, it's put off. It's not real at the moment. And if the person is suffering a true sex addiction, the initial sticker shock is just, it's not enough to stop. So the addiction escalates, and there's even more credit card charges and more phone bills as they continue on with the addiction. This can cause a downward spiral with the financial pressure pushing the sex addict deeper into their behaviors, and it can start to fuel more addictive behavior and cause them to seek other outlets for their sex addiction. If they're left unstopped, they may resort to criminal behavior to pay for their phone sex. They might steal cell phones or steal credit cards so that they don't have to be discovered. Because the level of human interaction going on, a person with this type of sex addiction to paid sex oftentimes develops an unrealistic sense of what a relationship entails because of how deep they get involved with their fantasy to the paid sex. If the behavior continues for a long time and the sex addiction becomes deep enough and causes other behaviors, then what happens is it starts to prevent a person from forming valid relationships when the opportunity arises, or it sabotages the existing relationship. The sex addict, what happens, comes to rely on these quote-unquote relationships as real. Phone sex is considered cheating by many, and because of the billing situation, it can be difficult for somebody to conceal. And this leads to emotionally charged and unexpected scenarios when a spouse or partner or family member or colleague or boss discovers these huge charges and they're in debt because they had to pay for their phone sex. Now, aside from paid phone sex, a sex addict can also use paid websites. There are a lot of websites out there that have a paid component for different aspects of it. Now, there is an abundance of free pornography online, so paid websites aren't as common anymore, but there are certain fetishes that people have that require paying to get into additional sites for the type of pornography they're looking for. There is a plethora of free pornography online, and it's designed to get people hooked to go even deeper to get more of what they're looking for. And these variety of free sites range in any type of fetish or addictive lifestyle sexually that the person is looking for. Now, like phone sex, prostitution raises a cost issue, which we've talked about. But besides the financial ramifications, prostitution presents a significant health risk because, as you know, sexually transmitted diseases, sexually transmitted infections are passed on by prostitutes and those people engaging in unprotected anonymous sex. Prostitution is also illegal in most places, and usually it's surrounded by other illegal activities, drug, crime, and by getting involved in prostitution, it's not just getting involved in the sex act, it's getting involved in all these other aspects of it. A person with a sex addiction who sees prostitutes on a regular basis oftentimes exposes them to a lot of other consequences. It can damage their reputation. It can cost them their marriage, family relationships, relationships in general, and their job. So we're talking about a lot of different consequences to the paid sex other than just the financial, the legal, or the health risks. So a lot of people often ask, well, why pay for sex when there's plenty of healthy people looking for sex out there? Well, a lot of times a sex addict using prostitutes, they may be looking for a level of intimacy that they can't find with other forms of sexual release available to them. While the interaction might stimulate the intimate parts of a real relationship, most people have a poor understanding of intimacy and a poor understanding of a meaningful romantic relationship and a meaningful romantic interaction with another person. They may be self-conscious, they have no confidence, and they're just challenged with how their life experiences. Paying for sex can usually block or destroy a lot of other relationships that the person is involved in. What it also does is prostitution, and to a lesser extent phone sex, create a false power dynamic that can usually add to the already distorted ideas that the person has about what a real relationship should be. The prostitute, of course, is paid and will perform sex acts that the client might not otherwise be able to engage in with someone who's not being paid for it. The prostitute's in a subservient position, so it's more like an employee rather than a caring romantic partner, and it brings in the power differential of the person needing to use this to be in control of somebody. And part of the attraction can be that the mindset is carried on to a real relationship. So they take the relationship they've created with a sex worker, a prostitute, And some of that mindset will then carry over into a real relationship where they might attempt to trade favors or gifts for affection and sex. So, as you can see, there's an awful lot of challenges with becoming addicted to paid sex. It's not as simple as just paying for sex. It's all the surrounding challenges. So, we talked about the damaging impact that addiction to paid sex can have, that phone sex being one of the most common ones, that it leads to financial problems with credit card charges and phone bills, and potentially maybe even escalating to having to resort to activities to steal money and steal phones and credit cards. And that we talked about paid websites, not as common anymore because of all the free pornography available. And then prostitution, the addiction to paying for prostitutes and the role that takes on in a person's life. And of course the consequences of reputation and relationships and finances. And then the whys of why do people pay for sex? It's because of the intimacy level. They can dominate, they can control, they can act out with the prostitute things that they may not really be able to do in their real relationships in life. And of course, they go to this because it's easy and they're addicted to it. Please visit our YouTube channel on sex addiction for more videos on sex addiction and recovery from sex addiction. Also, please visit our blog on sexaddiction.com, where you'll find a free video explaining what sex addiction is, the 7 symptoms of sex addiction, the 4 traumas that lead to sex addiction, and the 4 faulty core beliefs set up by those 4 traumas of addiction. You'll also find the solution to recovery from sex addiction, the 7 paths to success. Also, on the blog, you'll find more articles, videos, audios, and more information about sex addiction and sex addiction recovery. This is Scott Vogel on Sex Addiction.